Good afternoon and welcome to CanadianAgMarkets.com. My name is Brian Como with Ireland Como Lafoy. Let's get into what happened in ag markets today. We saw canola up $2.70. That's on the November to 693.90. We have Minneapolis wheat up 4 cents at 617.25. Minneapolis diverged a little bit from the other wheat classes today. We had Kansas down a cent or a penny at 526 and a quarter. We had Chicago wheat down a quarter of a cent at 534 and a quarter. Soybeans were down 7 and a quarter today at 1050 and a half. Corn down 1 3/4 at 437. We have the Canadian dollar trading up just slightly at 73.16. Live cattle up 70.75 at 218.03. Feeder cattle took a bit of a hit today. 311.08. That is down 207 on the day. All right, let's get into what is happening here. We're going to talk quite a bit about weather and some of these drought maps and things like that you see frequently in ag market news and things like that. This is the Palmer Drought Index, and this is as of June the 9th. So this is dated a couple of days ago. This, just to kind of give you some context, this index is a severity index that goes from +4, which is severely wet, to -4, which is extreme drought. Much of Western Canada, as you could see, that would be all this white area here, is near normal. And those are the index scores between, call it 1 and -1, so 0.99 to minus 0.99. For all intents and purposes, 1 to 1 on either side of 0. These yellow areas signal mild drought. So that would be like a rating of -1 to -2. And then as we move into the darker orange and the red, that would be, more moderate drought and severe drought, which we have very few areas at this point that are considered severe. We also have some areas here in southern Alberta that are moderately wet to very wet in some areas, which is a change from recent years. So that gives you some context on the Palmer Drought Index. Here's the Standard Precipitation Index. This is only a measure of precipitation. So the Drought Index, the Palmer Drought Index that we talked about just earlier there, includes temperature information. So this map does not. We can also observe this precipitation index on a time scale. So this is the shortest one that they produce at Agri-Food Canada. It is 30 days. And again, this is as of June the 9th. So you can see there's quite a lot of precipitation deficiencies, particularly on the west side of Regina, the northern central areas of Regina, and the western areas, the eastern areas of Alberta. Now, because this is a time scale map, this is the slightly longer 2-month scale. There are more warnings on this map, and it shows that it has been drier for longer in a lot of those same areas. So sometimes what you'll see is, a wetter month leading into a drier month where, the 30-day might look dry, but the previous 30 days might have accounted for a lot of that. In this case, it has not. It was, as a whole over the last, 60 days, the precipitation has been significantly below normal. Here's another map. This one I find can be misleading. It shows a lot of, kind of dryness on this map. And this is the kind of dry spell precipitation map. And it shows how many days in the specified time period there was less than 0.5 millimeter of rain. So essentially, not 0.5 millimeter or less, which essentially is no millimeter. Now, there is a map that shows, this is, so just to give some context, this is a 30-day map, June 9th. So this is a count of days with precipitation below 0.5 millimeter. So, in this instance, for example, a lot of these brown areas are 19 to 21 days. That doesn't necessarily mean consecutive days, right? So it's not necessarily an accurate predictor of whether there was a deficiency in precipitation, just how many days there was with little to no precipitation. So if you're looking at consecutive days, then you'll want to look at this. Then you'll want to look at this particular map. This is the count of days with maybe I didn't include that one here. Let's see. Accumulated precipitation. So there is another map that I thought I included in here, but there is another map of consecutive days. But again, that doesn't show necessarily consecutive days leading up to the date that the map was published. So it can be a consecutive number of days inside the middle of that 30-day period or 60-day period or whatever. So again, it can be a little misleading, which this is where I guess looking at the precipitation in the last 7 days is about the best that we have for showing, what current conditions kind of looked like at the time this data was assembled. So here you can see, some precipitation that helped the eastern prairies quite significantly, rain over the weekend and into the end of the week last week. That did put some precipitation into this eastern Saskatchewan and most of southern Manitoba. Again, a lot of those dry areas that we saw in that other part of the map, western Saskatchewan, eastern Alberta, are still deficient. That may change as we move forward. Here's the 120-day forecast. We do have, most of this blue area is, call it somewhere between the lighter or the darker blue areas are more like half an inch to 3/4 of an inch. The lighter blue areas actually move into an inch or more. So most of this looks like about an inch of rain or better in a lot of areas. The green is where you start getting into some of the deficiencies. You can still see that there's lots of areas that need some precipitation in the western part of Saskatchewan, the north central part of Saskatchewan, that are not going to get it according to this forecast in the next 5 days or so. All right, let's get into some of the futures values. Now, November canola closed 691.90 today. I was watching this as it closed, and it kind of was looking like we were going to see a close above, a close that was above all of the other previous closes. Now, we didn't necessarily see that into the end of the day. So still a little bit of neutral trade here in November canola. It did make a new high on Monday on this market. We tried to rally back, got a doji candle, a negative doji candle yesterday. Today, it tried to get back to 700 again, didn't quite get there. Looked like it was going to close again above Monday's close, but it failed to do that as well. So we're still seeing some neutrality here in canola futures as we move through. Some of that precipitation, I think, is the reason, or the precipitation being forecasted in some of those areas in the west is being seen as a positive for the crop overall. We did see some weakness in August Euronext rapeseed today. This is the most liquid contract that is trading at this time in Europe. It did stave off a close below the 20-day moving average, but we have kind of seen the moving averages kind of cluster in this area or consolidate in this area. The 20-day has kind of started moving negative, although it hasn't crossed over any of the other moving averages at this point. So we're still in kind of a negative to neutral area in the rapeseed market in Europe. It's been, kind of neutral since the middle of March. So not a lot of fireworks happening in this one. We did see some soybean oil advancement today. It did move up to test the 50-day and the 20-day. However, there are some concerns here on this chart. As you can see, we still have the Fibonacci retracement layered on here. It did move down to test that in this recent push lower. It's kind of coming back up now to test. We have like convergence of the 38.2% Fibonacci, the 20-day moving average, and the 50-day moving average. So I think that could be some relatively strong resistance here on the soybean oil chart. We may have only seen a rally in soybean oil as a result of some strength and energy today, and I'll get into that in a second. So there's a little bit of risk here, which could spill into canola a little bit as well. Switching over to wheat, yesterday we saw the big kind of gap lower in Minneapolis wheat. Today, we saw much ado about nothing as far as directional bias. We did see a positive candle today, but it still did not manage to close above where the open was yesterday after the, when it gapped open. So still some neutrality here, maybe a little bit more of a, a little bit more of a neutral bias. However, there is some good technicals here. We have the 20-day that is now crossing the 50-day. Yesterday's action did take us down to kind of those levels of support and bounced, and we haven't seen it, continue to move lower there. So, there might be another push higher here. I think that there's not necessarily the same kind of weather, good weather patterns that are coming in, but we did get some rain, and there have been some crop condition adjustments higher in the spring wheat area as well. So there's kind of a push pull going on right now between the condition ratings and the current weather. This is the forecast of precipitation. As you can see, it's good in the southern part of North Dakota, good in some of the central area of Minnesota, and parts of South Dakota. The northern North Dakota is still a little bit deficient of a rain, or won't get a lot. This is the accumulated precipitation over the last little while. Again, lots of areas of North Dakota, which grows almost half the spring wheat in the U.S., is didn't get a lot. We got a little pocket here. We got a little pocket in northwestern Minnesota, which is a pretty big area for spring wheat, and some stuff in the north. So again, this is kind of what's pressuring the wheat market, but the lower acres and the fact that we're not getting rain in all of the areas is affecting spring wheat as well. So it's definitely a weather market out there. All right, switching over to live cattle. Live cattle reached a new high yesterday, and we saw some pullback today. This just may be the market feeling a little bit overbought and has been backing off a little bit. There has been some rumors of immigration raids in Nebraska, which may have pressured futures. And it's kind of fueling ideas that beef packing operations could be slowing, which potentially backs up the cattle supplies. The news source that I got this from, which was Reuters, was able to confirm that the raids occurred at those major Nebraska beef packing plants, but local news reports said the U.S. immigration officials raided Glen Valley Foods in Omaha, which is a family-owned meat producer. Whether we saw live cattle kind of neutral today. Feeder cattle took the bigger hit. I don't know if that you'd think that plant slowdowns would affect live cattle more than the feeder cattle, but for whatever reason, we saw a bit of a dip today in feeder cattle after almost 5 straight days of gains and new all-time highs seen in August feeder cattle just this week. Another big bull market today. The market's cheered evolving trade negotiations between the U.S. and China. Reports suggested that a framework deal is in place, with U.S. President Trump signaling the deal is done, pending final approval. That bolstered global growth expectations and demand for oil. And we saw oil rise significantly, from over $2.80 a barrel today. Some other things that have been affecting this market recently: OPEC Plus, raised their output quotas, but actual supply increases have lagged those official announcements. So, inventories of crude oil remain tight. Even U.S. crude oil stocks fell last week as refining activity picked up. That kind of drove the gasoline and distillate inventories higher, but the crude oil market lower. The official report is that crude inventories fell by 3.6 million barrels to 432.4 in the week ended June the 6th, the EIA reported. So what we saw was WTI break above some key resistance at the $65 area. We saw it move above some of these technical indicators like the 200-day moving average. It did close above the 200-day moving average. We may see this back off tomorrow. This was a pretty aggressive move, but if we can see another push above the 200-day, that would be a positive for the crude oil market as well. We also saw some MACD crossovers and things like that I didn't show on this chart, but there is some buy stops and buy orders getting triggered in this market as well, which probably helped to drive it up today as well. That is all that we have for you today. Thank you for tuning in. We will be back with you tomorrow for our special USDA WASDE edition. So make sure you tune in for that. See you again tomorrow. Cheers.